Hi there, Trent and Brittany here from Making Natural the Norm. We've just had the idea tonight that it might be interesting to make up a little video and ask Brittany a few questions about her health and her health journey and what life was like before she realized she had a few health issues. So that's where we're going to start the questions. So first off, what was your diet like before you realized you had some issues going on?
Well, when I was growing up, my mom always made sure that she made home-cooked meals for dinner every night, and we always had a fruit, a veggie, meat, and usually bread, bread and butter. So I grew up kind of eating, I would say, a healthier version of the standard American diet. But then when I moved away from home, started college, and was out on my own, I ate out a lot more. Takeout was frequent in my life, and I probably ate tons of grains and dairy, more so than ever before. I loved my pizza and my ice cream and treats galore. So cooking was pretty non-existent. Cooking for me was like buying something from the freezer section and heating it up in a skillet, and that was dinner. So yeah, I would say that my diet was not healthy, even though I've never been a picky eater and I love all kinds of fruits and veggies. I just wasn't nourishing my body with that when I was out on my own. I also think that because it was a stressful time in my early 20s, is probably another reason why I didn't want to bother with cooking anything. I just wanted a fast meal. I wanted it to be quick and done with, and I could move on to the next thing. Also, growing up, my whole pattern of eating was not normal. I would get diarrhea a lot after eating growing up, especially in my teenage years, and it kind of created an unhealthy relationship with food. So in my late teens and early 20s, I kind of got to the point where I was eating much less than I had ever eaten before. My weight got to a really low point. I enjoyed being really skinny, but I was not healthy. I was eating like one meal every other day, and I was pretty much starving myself for a period of time. And part of that was due to the fact that I would just get diarrhea after eating, and it was not fun to be in that state. So, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'd like to add to that. I think that pretty much covers it. If I think of something else, I'll add it in at a later point.
Sure. So we'll move on to question 2, which you touched on. With that type of diet, what was your lifestyle like? You mentioned college.
Well, yes, my lifestyle also was not very healthy and great. I was suffering from extreme fatigue. I was always tired. I had zero energy. I don't know how I even went to college, to be honest, and graduate, let alone get good grades. So, especially during college, I was pulling a lot of all-nighters, and I would study the whole entire night long. I would either go to bed super late and then I'd have to sleep in, or well, more what would happen is I would go to bed late and then get up super early, and then on the weekends I would crash and have to like sleep the entire weekend to catch up on my sleep. So there was that component, and then the other aspect is like I mentioned, my early 20s were a very stressful time in my life, and I was extremely stressed out. So I'm sure that that played a huge role in my debilitating elp.
Okay. All right. So for quite some years, seemingly from your mid-teens, would that be fair to say, up through your college years, you did have some health problems with digestion, but when did you start to learn or feel that there was something more to it than just diarrhea?
Yeah, I never really grew up understanding the relationship of food to your body. I know that might sound naive, but I thought like people who ate super healthy were just kind of odd, and I couldn't really understand why when you can have ice cream and pizza and all this other good stuff. So I never really thought much to, I mean, I did experiment with some different diets, and I tried going like grain-free for a while and dairy-free, and this was when I was getting really sick. I really was kind of desperate, and I was Googling and searching and trying to find out what I should do, and what I should eat and stop eating and all of that. But it wasn't until I started noticing some huge symptoms that I had never experienced before that kind of pushed me over the edge to be like, okay, my body is screaming for help, and there's something I need to do to step in and get things taken care of. So what I first noticed was, it was January of 2012 really that and how old was I at that time? January 2012, I think I was 25, right? 24?
Because you're 28 now.
But it's only 2015.
Oh.
That's okay.
We're not very good at maths. Please forgive us.
No. So I was 25, January 2012. I started noticing what I thought was a yeast infection, and I thought it was one because I had had one prior when I was around 21, and it was right after I had first started birth control pills, as I had just, I just started birth control pills. So that gave me a yeast infection, and what I was experiencing when I was 25 I thought was the same thing. However, it turned out not to be.
Okay.
Should I just keep continuing on with that, or?
I'll ask the next question. It'll tie in nicely.
Okay.
So on top of everything you mentioned before, the critical fatigue and the digestion issues, you now had the new symptom. What was your first step to try and get that fixed up? What did you do first?
Well, I actually started I went to a few different clinics to try to see if I could get it taken care of, as I thought it was something minor. As the first yeast infection I had, I got medicine for it and it went away straight away. However, when I went to these doctors and I told them, I think I do have a yeast infection, they checked me. They did say, they did notice that there was yeast, so they gave me medicine for it. However, I would take the medicine and it wasn't taking away my symptoms at all. My symptoms were actually progressing as I went to these different clinics to try to get help. So at first, it was just what you notice with a yeast infection, but after time, I was noticing parts of my skin were starting to open up into open wounds, and they were I guess little sores, you could call them, and they would bleed and ooze, and it was extremely painful. as well as itchy, and there was also swelling in the entire area as well that was extremely painful. So, what was the question? I forgot.
When did you realize that you had something more serious?
Oh, right. So, obviously, as my symptoms were progressing, things were getting worse. It was then that they referred me to a gynecologist who was a specialty gynecologist. So, I started going to her. And then when I first went to her, she initially thought I had some STD or something like that. So she had me tested for all of those, and I kept telling her, they're going to come back negative. It's not an STD, which they did. And at that point, she thought that it might have an autoimmune component. She did do a biopsy at that point as well. The biopsy did not show anything other than eczema, so she referred me over to a dermatologist for further testing.
Okay. The parts we've just discussed, I've realized, covered two questions. One was, what was the first step that you took to try and see what was wrong and how it could be fixed? And then more recently, we sort of covered what was the next step when the clinics didn't help, and when your symptoms were getting worse, you sort of tried over to the gynecologist. The gynecologist thought there may have been an autoimmune sector to it. What was the next step after that?
Okay, well, the dermatologist took another biopsy. He thought that I had something like Crohn's disease or Behçet's disease or inflammatory bowel disease. However, and it's interesting to note that none of these doctors ever talked about having like food allergies or changing my diet or anything like that. So I was left just feeling utterly confused. I did not know what was happening to me. After he did his biopsy, the only thing that came back was an extreme form of eczema, which is called lichen simplex chronicus, is the scientific term for it. And other than that, I wasn't getting any answers. And he prescribed me steroid creams to put to the area. However, it's really extremely painful to put steroid creams to open wounds. So, I tried them, but it just wasn't going to be a long-going thing for me. I needed to find exactly what was happening to me, why, and fix the why so that I could start feeling better.
Okay, so understandably at this point, you've been to a number of different clinics. You've been to a gynecologist and a dermatologist. The medication from the clinics hasn't helped. During that time, you noticed the symptoms were getting worse over time. Then through the dermatologist and gynecologist, they were both looking around, starting to think that it might be something to do with an autoimmune issue. We were starting to get a little bit of help, but still no closer to a diagnosis or finding out what you need to do to make the best of the situation. What were the steps between this point with the gynecologist and dermatologist to sort of finding the next link in the diagnosis chain, we can say?
Right. Well, since the biopsy from the dermatologist did not show up any specific clues indicating that I did have Crohn's or even lupus, or Behçet's, that, he was kind of at a loss. He's like, you don't have any of the autoimmune diseases that I suspected, so here's some steroid creams and I hope you feel better. So that was really depressing because I was unsure of what to do next. So at that low point in my time in my life where I had to quit my work. Working was just too much for me during that time. And I was actually living with my mom, who is not in good health herself. And I was spending days and nights around the clock searching online for answers. And I kept Googling. I found in my research a lot of information regarding functional medicine and integrative medicine, and I was really interested in that, as it talked about finding the root causes of your illness, and through lab testing, confirming the things that you need to change in your life in order to feel better. It's a holistic approach that looks at your entire body, not just one part. And it was really intriguing to me. I eventually ran onto the website called the Ultra Wellness Center, and which is run by Dr. Mark Hyman, who's a prominent MD in functional medicine. And I showed my mom. We read all about it. We both felt really good about it. It was located on the East Coast in Massachusetts, and we ended up just calling and making an appointment for me, and we got our flights booked and we were ready to go.
Okay, so the hours and hours on Google seem to have paid off. I wonder if you ever tried WebMD. Was that of any help?
Not really.
Didn't think so. Don't try WebMD. It doesn't work. So you had your flights booked to go to see the clinic. What happened when you first got to the clinic?
It was unlike any other doctor appointment that I've ever had, where you're just kind of in and out, maybe 15 minutes max in the little waiting room. So basically my appointment started in the morning, so I arrived at the center in the morning.
So this was a whole day thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was there the entire day. So the doctor met with me, and then I met with an actual nutritionist, which was pretty amazing. And then both of them talking, they came up with lots of lab tests that they wanted me to take that would help them determine where to help me.
Okay, that sounds pretty great. Pretty broad with what they cover, pretty focused on taking everything into account, which is always great when you're trying to work out a problem. There's no point working out 2 + 2 without the second 2, because you'll never get where you want to be.
Nope. Okay.
We can do some maths.
Yeah. So basically, yeah. So